complicated coordination thing happening. So from politics to politics and luxury, it's kind of a touchy subject, so we wanted to get it over with early. And I know it's a touchy subject because my Twitter feed is, at the moment, full of very angry people who did not like the fact that I wrote about Mrs. Trump's recent trip to Asia. There seems to be just like a general perception that politics should not come in the same sentence as fashion or luxury. But the thing is, as Mr. Letta said, politics is about emotion and identity, and luxury is about emotion and identity. And you can't really take the one out of the other. The personal has become professional, has become political. And I think it's very hard now for a company not to stand for something and to stand up and be counted. Because people buy things not just because they're pretty, but because they represent something more. So I'm very happy to have with me Jonathan Akeroyd, the chief executive of Versace, Jean-Marc Loubier, the chairman of Delvaux and also the head of Fung Brands, and Geoffroy de la Bourdonnaye, the chief executive of Chloé, to talk about the issues and the risks involved with standing up. And so I want to start really with the question that I'm going to ask each of you. We can just go down the line, which is, is it possible for a brand to be neutral anymore? And if not, why not?
I think from my point of view, when I first read the topic, it's so easy to say, well, we're a brand, we want to sell dreams and aspirations, and it's not our job to get into politics. But I think the more you think about it and the more you study it, there's definitely an expectation now, even more than ever, that our customers expect us to have some kind of political statement about what we are, and looking through even the history of our brand, it's very clear that even over the years with even Gianni Versace, we've made some political statements. I think for me the most important part is that you can't just say it to be bold and make a sweeping statement. It needs to be something that really resonates with your brand. And for us, even as early as this year in January, Donatella made a Donatella person that's gone through an incredible journey that everybody knows, and actually is somebody that's not been taken very seriously, over a long time of her career, has since the last 2 years has embraced Instagram and social media, and kind of really started to tell a story about herself being a strong woman that's making a stand and making various statements about equality and empowerment for women, etc. And she kind of took that to the point in January of actually doing a show heavily dedicated on it. And for us, it got very well received, but also it really people really understood it and got it and thought that it was the right thing to do. And even the music was all about women's empowerment, and it ended up being one of her strongest shows. And this is, and as a result, her, I believe even before this show, but the credibility of her has been incredible. And I think so. In some ways, if it fits to the brand, I think it's important to make some strong messages.
Jean-Marc?
For me, I think it's important to, before acting, is to think about what we have to do and what we are in charge of. I think in the world of today, it's very what we see around us. Everyone is involved. Everyone can make statements. Everyone can hardly think and claim something. So we have to be careful with the fact that there is a lot of confusion. And in fact, we're in charge. We're in charge of company. We're in charge of people, but we don't have any mandate. So we represent very specific interests. But behind that, what's important to have is the value we are representing and the value we are putting forward. So in a company, what you have to do is to stick what is your job. At the end of the day, the company must be profitable. You have to deliver something which is intangible, so that what you sell is not just one more product, but you don't have the responsibility. So it's very easy to react, it's very easy to make statements, but the responsibility is something else. So the point is, As a client, as a consumer, as a manager, as a staff member, you have your own responsibility. And behind that is the ethics, or what you have to do. And each of us are in charge about our own ethics. Our ethic is to make people living better, is also to make sure that the value represent are relevant, and this relevance has to bring something fresh, but also long-lasting value. So what we're in charge of is making this long-lasting value relevant. Then, of course, we see that the economy is made by P&L, is made by education, and what we have to do in our company is to find ways for that to exist on a realistic part. I think our future is not about something average. The world is made of diversity, and there was a question before about European people are consuming less luxury goods. No, they are consuming much more than 40 years ago. The point that luxury was not an industry at that time. So French people, English people are consuming much more than before. What has changed is the massive impact in the world, because the world became much richer. And then we have the problem, what are the quantity we can sell with the same value behind? And at the same time, it's the way we can give to new things coming, which are not all about concrete product, which we see with the digital world, etc. But digital by itself is not also the end of the project. What do we put on digital? So for that, it's not just being a politician, it's not just being an economist or being a businessman, it's how together we can see on not protect, but make sustainability a real case, and sustainability which is also welcoming creativity, concrete services, and make sure that it's not a world that will be only for elite, but also for very simple people. And I think that at each level of society, there is something interesting that you can get, buy, or just use. That's why I think also in the world of today, the welfare idea is so important. Welfare is not at all out of fashion, it's a must. And welfare doesn't exist enough. It exists very strongly in Europe. It doesn't exist in Asia. It doesn't exist in South America. So how can this country arrive to that point? On Earth, we are just a little persona in that kind of field.
Thank you, Geoffroy.
I think the answer is yes. We should stay neutral.
You should stay neutral.
And brands, yes. I think I don't think we should play in the arena of politics. We're playing the arena of society. Brands are playing a very important role in shaping the behaviors of consumers and individuals. It doesn't mean that they should not be responsible. In fact, they should be even more responsible. But politics are usually lagging and not leading the societal changes. Let me just give you an anecdote. I don't know whether you know about what happened with Charles de Gaulle in London after the capitulation of France. He tried, of course, to convince the British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, that he was a very legitimate representative of France. And he failed at the beginning to convince Winston Churchill that he was legitimate, until he decided to relocate, I don't know how it happened, to be quite honest, but in the headquarters of Cartier on Bond Street. From that moment, he became credible. Because for the British, Cartier meant a lot, far more than General de Gaulle at the time. Just shows the power of brands and politics. But I think we should stay neutral.
Well, there is a difference between, representing sustainability and representing even women's rights, which are relatively, I would say, non-controversial ideas, and, overtly supporting an actual political candidate or speaking out against him the way, which is what happened in the US with a lot of the fashion industry kind of standing up against now President Trump last year. Do you think that those kind of lines are important? Is it, possible that sustainability is not really a political issue, it's simply an issue? And that's the kind of difference?
I don't think we are neutral. By the fact that we exist, we represent certain values. And at the eve of the world luxury consumption, people in Asia or even in America, they were buying the archetype of what they thought was the European elite consumption, but it was not. It was just belonging to a very small part of these communities. So it means that behind that, there are archetypes. And in the company, at least in luxury, we play with these archetypes. The point is how we make them relevant. So we take a position on how we are going to shape also the consumption network. We have to make it relevant also, so it's not neutral. What is important is that we are not representing people. They have to know what we are expressing, and they are able to judge. And that will avoid what you call now fake news. So they know that. So the point is the credibility with which we act, and then what the kind of respect to whom we speak or to whom we sell that we are representing. And there's a fine line here which is difficult to get. And to get it, there's the need also in front of it for education. Because if you are not educated, you cannot see the difference. And if we are not...
Wait,
Yeah.
Geoffroy, he's gonna disagree.
When I said we need to be neutral, it's not neutral vis-à-vis society, it's neutral vis-à-vis politics, politicians. By the same token, we would not be taking any stance on religion. It's not our role. I mean, speaking about Chloé, which is what I'm responsible for, the mission from the beginning is to encourage women to be free, to dare to be themselves. That's a very important promise for women around the world, whether they are from the left or the right, whether they are from one religion to another, whether they're from one country to another. It's the same values, and I agree with you, human values that we're speaking to. So it's society, not politics. I think politics is more restrictive.
Okay,
to
but
me.
speaking of empowering women or freeing women, how do you feel about opening stores or working in countries that do not empower women? I mean, do you think that you should? I mean, clearly you do sell there, so.
No, I think if your core values as a company are very clear, and certainly ours are very clear along that matter. I mean, you can't. I think it's dangerous to go. I agree. We're not a political. We're not in politics. We're in fashion and we're in luxury. So, but I think if your core values really support some of these messages, then that's probably about the best you can go and the furthest that you can go with it. I believe.
And how do you layer that? So Donatella puts a logo on a hat or a scarf.
Yeah.
And how do you demonstrate to consumers that goes deeper and is real and is sort of a systemic value as opposed to just a superficial value?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we need to. The company culture needs to embrace that. So in terms of who you employ, how you employ them, we're extremely diverse. We also support a number of initiatives as well. But you can't just put it on a hat and some clothing. You need to very much follow it through.
And then how do you communicate that? Because one of the things with sustainability, which is a sort of issue I've followed over a number of years, is in the beginning, even brands that actually had quite good practices in place were quite nervous about advertising that or talking about it because they were so worried that if they put their heads over the parapet, someone would immediately take like a giant mud ball and fling it at them and say, yeah, but you don't do all this other stuff. So, how do you communicate your own values in a way that, maybe opens you to some risk?
Yeah, I joined 18 months ago, and we are very, very low on the ranker brand as brands to buy. In fact, it's kind of recommended to not buy Versace if you go onto that website.
By who?
A ranker brand.
Oh,
it's and if the reason is because we have no sustainability message. So it was a big drama when this came to me basically, and my view on that is instead of we need to now, and we started this a really strong journey of sustainability about just over a year ago, but it's not the time to communicate because clearly we now need to make sure that we do it properly because we will be exposed if we just start flying a flag and having a sustainability code of conduct. We need to make sure that when we do communicate, we've got all of the messages in place. So that's something that we're about to do, and in a very strong way. And we've made some quite pioneering steps to create that. So I think when we do it, people will say, "Wow, that's quite interesting." We've just, I think we're one of the first brands that has co-collaborated with all of our suppliers to create a supplier code of conduct, and that's been really fully embraced. But we need to spread that message at the right time. Otherwise, I still think right now, you're probably a little bit exposed.
And Jean-Marc, I mean, you talked about welfare, you talked about sustainability. How do you talk
I think
outwardly?
we need sustainability in everything we do, not just the product. And when I look at a brand has always a strong body and a strong soul. And that's what people need. If not, it's just commodity product, and then it becomes a price point, or with the level of quality you want to deliver. Now the world is much more open. You can find goods everywhere. They can be from Japan, from America. You have very beautiful Japanese brands. They are from America. They will be in China, in Korea, etc. And we have something to say from Europe. And what we have to say from Europe is a long history of building up a community which did not exist. Mr. Letas talked about the fight between Pisa and Firenze for 8th century. That was true everywhere in Europe. So Europe is not a given. France is not a given. Italy is not a given. Spain neither. It's all a matter about decision, about vision for future, where people are putting together strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so when you come to a brand, you have the same point of view that you have to deliver. And as a brand owner or as a brand responsible, I insist on the value of my brands. And to give you an example, we, before the election in Paris during the Fashion Week, we welcome people supporting Hillary Clinton at Sonia Rykiel. Why Sonia Rykiel? Because in the value of the brand, there is this idea of woman and responsibility.
That seems like a political statement to me.
It was.
You.
I don't mind with that, but it was relevant. It was relevant to certain value of the company, and it was relevant also to a certain vision of the world. We were not doing politics. And if
politics.
No. We were doing about long-term values. And she was representing certain long-term values which are consistent with the brand.
Yeah, but you cannot deny that people would see that as a statement of support for Hillary Clinton, who was running for office. Okay,
and at the same time, when I opened a Louis Vuitton store in China in '92, it's also a political stance. At that time, China is not that open. Is it freedom? I'm not sure. It's a developing country. What we did by opening there at that time, it was a very heavy decision, was to help also the country change, opening mind, opening the way of looking at what will be the future at our level. So what we have to do is at our level. We are not elected. We are not politicians. If politician means short-term politics, it's a problem. If economy means just figures, it's a problem. If a company means only P&L, it's a problem. What are the value putting all that together? Whatever your level in the world.
I
so
do
that's
think
the way we act.
I mean, that's a little semantics that may be seen one way inside and a different way externally, and there, that's kind of where the risk lies, right?
We take
Geoffroy,
risk.
I wonder, it's interesting to me that you said brand should stay neutral because you are, of the three executives on the stage, you're the one that's owned by a big group. It's not a private company. Do you think that makes it different?
No, because I think everybody has a different role. I mean, the politicians are in charge of representing the interests of the whole society, people who voted for them. Our interests are different. We are in the style industry, in the entertainment industry. We're here to provide pleasure, magic, and to really make women feel better. I'm not saying it's not an important role. It's a very important role to make everybody's life better. But our mandate is not to decide where to put the budget between education and the military. That's not our job. And in my company, I always insist that as much as we work in a team, everybody has a role. And our role is to be relevant to women who want to look great and to want to be themselves. One thing, for example, which is important to us is not to impose a look, not to impose something, even to our clients. So we're not going to talk about things we don't even know or control, which is politics. I'm not saying society, because society is very, very much crucial to the fashion industry and to the way we design, to our creative director designs a collection. It's fundamental. But society is always ahead of politics. That's my point.
Do you have an actual policy about this? I mean, speaking, because the Times, as everyone may know, does in fact have a policy about this, and we've been asked not to tweet personal political opinions because we represent the newspaper. Do you say that to your employees too? Stay away.
Stay away.
Do you ask your employees to stay away from making overt personal political statements?
I don't have a formal policy on that, to be quite transparent. But it's never happened, thanks God. And
Maybe you should.
Maybe I should. Maybe I should. Maybe I should. No, we try to like, by the way, it's interesting in the press. The press must be independent. It's the fourth power. You are very...
Jean-Marc doesn't think it's independent.
No, maybe. No, but in my mind,
I'm sorry.
when I say independent, they can have an opinion, but you are very independent with the brands you play with. You cannot be too partisan with a brand. If you push towards too much to a brand you play, it's the same balance that you have to exert with the people who, sorry to say that, participate to your financial equation. You have to be balanced. And by the same token, we have to be balanced. We will adapt to whatever politics impose. They usually are stronger at banning than encouraging. We will always play within the rules, but we try to be even more responsible, and sometimes we are ahead of the rules on feminism, on sustainability. Sometimes we don't wait for the laws or the political decisions to be passed to make more responsible actions.
Have any of you ever gotten into trouble for taking a stand on anything? Have you had any blowback from consumers or people in power, for that matter?
You know, given the world of today and the importance of digital, it's so easy to have reactions. So we all have hundreds of reactions, but we don't care.
You don't care?
No, as soon as we know, no, because then the next day there are as much, and then people forget. The point, that's why you need to have a very clear stance where you want, what you want to do, what you are doing, the way you are doing, and is it consistent with your strategy and with your core values. As soon as that's clear, you go your way. The point is, the background of that is respect, credibility.
I would like you to ask the same questions to prominent politicians to disclose which brands they buy or where. I think they'd be very wary, very shy to say that. Sometimes they are trapped because they cannot hide the fact that they wear a logo brand. Sometimes, you know. So it's the same kind of a...
They made their choice.
That's why they, you know, that anyone who pretends that politicians are not thinking about what brands they put on their back is full of baloney. I mean, they're all thinking about it because it all has implications and it's all interpreted, it's all seen, you know.
But they can't, sorry to interrupt you, but they cannot become a one brand supporter. They're smart at that, balance.
I think for me, one of the most challenging things to manage is managing creativity. Because when collections are being developed, you know, the designers, they're all young kids, they're designing all of these collections, and before you know it, you know, something, you know, a print is being done, and you know, everybody's experienced it. It can cause all sorts of trouble on social media. So,
like what?
well, like, I mean, we picked a print from Gianni's archive, so from, you know, over 20 years ago, and it was a native Indian print, and you know, that went on the collections, and you know, it's high risk. There's a story to it because it was a Gianni print, but you know, that you're on dangerous ground now. I think anything that you do, and we really need to make sure that our designers are really, really aware of the consequences of what they're, you know, doing and putting on their collections.
I mean, that's a very good point, that, you know, sort of the question of cultural appropriation and sensitivities around cultural appropriation become incredibly heightened, you know, in recent years because everyone can see everything, you know, and the exposure is immediate and the reaction is immediate. So how do you guard against that? I mean, it's just a lot of research? Or?
It's really hard because obviously these, you know, all of our designers, they're young and you know, they don't understand the importance of it and what they're doing. So it's a question of, it just has to be monitored through the management process, really. But yeah, it's and as soon as you know, we all know many examples. As soon as somebody doesn't agree with it, it can take less than 24 hours to become a major problem for the company.
Geoffroy, do you have this issue?
No, but I was just thinking as I was listening. I think a brand usually communicates on what makes that brand different and relevant to its consumers. Of course, we have to be conscious of the fact that sustainability is very important. We have a code of conduct. All our partners respect that code of conduct, sign that code of conduct. But it's not a communication platform for us. It's a given. I mean, it doesn't make much sense for us to spend our money talking about something which should be a given. We just don't want to reassure our market, but we want to really communicate on what makes us different, is to give independence and freedom to women. And if we want them to be independent, we'd better be independent as well. So we don't want to privilege women who are from one side, one politician side, or the other, another politician side, or from one gender or gender. Women, we are just women, sorry. From one country to another, or from one... So this independence for us is particularly important. We're not trying to impose anything.
Okay, I have one final question, and then we'll open this up to the audience. We were just talking about Brexit and the European Union. You're all European companies. Did you get involved in this? Did you lobby for, against Brexit, your countries, your governments?
No, I mean, everybody had a point of view, for sure. But, I think that is something where you're probably best to sit back and see what happens. And I think, we've all been through so much in our careers in luxury. I think that you've just got to navigate around it and manage it the best way possible, I believe. But certainly we made no messages strongly.
We did not do anything from, of course, having lived 10 years in London and having friends who just moved to London, like Stephen, this is a very hot topic in dinners and conversations. And we all have opinions. I mean, I wish the world could be more united. That being said, everybody makes their own decision and people are in charge of their own country and it doesn't affect us. We will adapt.
Yeah. We don't have a mandate to propose something there, but whenever I have meetings, being in America, being in China, in Japan, I always say that it's very important that Europe exists and develop. I always say that the Brexit is not a good solution. I always acknowledge the fact that if Brexit happens because Europe hasn't done sufficient things in the recent years to exist and to give a kind of vision to whatever the people. I also explained that Brexit or Catalonia or that kind of thing is always linked to a certain kind of social crisis and the importance of populists everywhere. Because when you see that behind these two elements, there is no plan, really. So, but it's a personal opinion. I explain also how my companies represent certain value from these continents, beyond nationality and beyond genders. And people understand, and they like that.
Okay, great. And with that, questions from the floor. I'm going to call on people if you don't ask questions. I told you that last night. Okay, there we go. Julian.
Hi, I'm Julian Vogel from Modus BPCM. Over the years, I've worked with a lot of brands who've used this platform as a way of communicating their message. And I think Geoffroy was saying that it's important that it's relevant to the consumer. I think it's more of an observation, I suppose, than a question. But
no, you have to ask questions.
Okay, well, I think that all of you as brands have huge platforms. You have huge media spends. And through your stores and through your direct mail and through your consumer platforms. It just seems there is a huge responsibility to talk and to explain things. And I suppose it's whether you stick to sustainability or whether you get involved in more complicated issues.
So yeah, it's actually, so what you're saying is really, is it your responsibility to stand up and actually pick something?
Yeah, and I think that, again, going back to the consumer, some consumers, they do want to just be entertained. They don't want to be reminded of all the terrible things that are going on in the world. But I think that the millennial consumer seems to be much more politicized. And I think that there are a lot less sort of honest platforms. So with fake news, and also they're not actually really consuming very much media. So from brands that they trust, maybe there are messages that they're going to be more educated through the brands.
So I'm going to interpret that. Do you think that as the millennials become your main consumer base, you are going to be forced into taking more political stands? Which is a very good question.
Well, I think we discussed the point already, and
No.
well, I'm afraid so we have spoken for nothing for half an hour. I think a brand is not a given. And you say that our brand had a lot of background, but graves are full of companies with background, so it's not enough. At one point, we decide to do, or we have the means to do something, and we make it relevant to the current times.
No, I think the point is like you have power. You have a direct relationship with a lot of people who buy your products and keep your products very close to them. I mean, the thing about luxury is these are objects that are very close to people's selves. So is it your responsibility then to imbue them with something more?
But I think it's our responsibility to listen to them and to respond to their questions. Whether or not we take a stance depends on the circumstances. For us, as I said, when we decide on where to put our communication platform, we prefer to talk about what makes us different and relevant to our market. But of course, we are working on sustainability. We're working on all those points that we discussed, and we're quite happy to share that with our consumers.
In what we have, there is a lot of diversity. There is nothing. It's very far away between Chloé and Delvaux, or Delvaux and Sonia Rykiel. My best-selling product at Delvaux is 60 years old. So there is a lot of sustainability behind that, because this product never comes out of fashion. You see, an example, then when I do Sonia Rykiel, it's about fashion. So there, I have to find the fine line between something which must exist and fresh, bring creativity of the year, being current, also, but not being disposable, something that you have to throw away. So that's a balance.
I was talking to a bunch of sportswear companies over the summer, like North Face and REI, and what they have found is that increasingly actually standing for a specific agenda not only is good for them, but pulls consumers to them who feels it, and that in fact the benefits of that new group of consumers outweighs the risk of losing some consumers who might not like you because you are neutral. And I think part of what Julian was getting at is whether this is going to be the case for luxury as well, and if you are missing something, if there is a risk in not actually getting out there and trying.
Sorry.
I actually think it's going to go more that way. I think brands are expected to kind of have more and more of a voice, and we work with a company called Nativa actually, who are helping us on our sustainability journey. And you talk about a brand like Patagonia, where they have very strong values on whatever they are, and I think now the new consumers that we have do expect you to be something more as a strong big business, something more than just making clothes. They really want to hear a louder voice, but obviously you've got to manage that in the right way.
But I think it's relevant to take a stance where you play in your arena. So North Face climate makes sense for femininity, for the feminism that we believe in.
You can't just stand for femininity.
Sorry?
You can't just stand for femininity.
No.
Masculinity.
No. But within the femininity, within the femininity, we take lots of stances. And we take lots of stances during every collection, but during the partnerships we do with artists and.
But that's communication.
Yeah, but taking a stand for me is to communicate.
Yeah. You see, the question of sustainability is much bigger. You're referring to, I don't want to name that, so they are multi-billion company. How did they develop an expensive product? How was it possible? Where was the manpower for all this product? In third world countries. So the people there moved from countryside to city, huge manufacturing everywhere. So for years, ability to provide high volume, not very expensive. Was it sustainable? No. So that one night they have to change and to present themselves differently. I remember some years ago I was driving with my wife and we were in the beautiful landscape of the middle of France and listening to an advertisement on the radio. And it was an advertisement by a big retailer in France. And I nearly had a car crash because I heard a jean for €4, not big discounted. How can you sell to the consumer a €4 blue jean? It's not possible. So sustainability is that
But
That's the problem.
But the other implication of that is sweatshops, right? Which is
That's what I mean.
Which is a significant
That's why it cannot
political
work long
risk.
term.
So,
So a €4 product that you throw away cannot exist.
okay.
It means that you don't pay anything for that. You
One
don't even
final?
speak about sustainability.
We're going to go. One final question. Oh, we've got like a bazillion final questions. We only get one though because we're running out of time. So, second.
Thank you. Dominique Crystal with Bombardier Business Aircraft. In my previous life, I worked for Bombardier, so both trains and planes, and I actually led our sustainability, communications, and strategy worldwide. So understanding, of course, exactly that, the complexity of something that spans hazardous waste to women in leadership to risk management, all of that, and how you are actually capturing all of that data, governing it, et cetera. Wondering to each of you, do you have established teams who are looking at that, or a group perhaps, or you're working with third parties, or is it integrated into the individual mandates of your teams, if you see what I mean? I'd love to understand a little bit of how that works within each of your organizations. Thank you.
From our side, the way I saw it, we needed to start almost from scratch and redefine our whole policy. So we've got an external company that's helping us. We're now using our management team to create our sustainability policies and and creating an internal team. So yeah.
Jean-Marc?
I used to belong to a big group. I don't anymore. I've created a small one. So the company are developing very strongly, but they are very small. So I count on individual responsibility. We have set goals. We have set objectives. We have set kind of, let's say, status and image. And everything has to fit in. Then we have working meeting, we have processes, so everything is not perfect, but at least we try day by day to improve it and to make it relevant.
Geoffroy?
Yeah, we do work a lot at Chloé and within Richemont on those topics with teams and, as I said, code of conduct. We have like hundreds of code of conduct that we review, audit, and take action if our partners don't follow the sustainability or responsibility, because it's just people, environment, animals. If they don't follow the rules, we ban them after. And of course, we give them a chance to remedy. We're not trying to, be too tough. But we want to do it with a very, very no compromise agenda.
Okay, well, I think on the no compromise, it is time to end this. But thank you very much.
Okay.
for